A baby snatched from the hospital.
Please bring me back my child.
It was the kidnapping of a newborn baby that rattled the nation.
The search is on for Kamiyah and her abductor.
In 1998, Kamiyah Mobley was stolen from her mother, Kamiyah Mobley, at a Jacksonville, Florida hospital. She was only 8 hours old.
18 years after a newborn was stolen from a Florida hospital, a young woman in South Carolina would look in the mirror and realize she didn't know who she was. Her name, her birthday, even the woman she called mom, all of it, a carefully crafted illusion. For years, she lived a normal life. She laughed, loved, went to school, and dreamed of her future. But behind every smile was a secret even she didn't know she was keeping. It all unraveled the day a DNA test exposed the impossible truth. The woman who had raised her, comforted her, and loved her was also the woman who had kidnapped her. Her name was Kamiyah Mobley, though she had grown up believing she was Alexis Kelli Manigo. For nearly 2 decades, she was both missing and found, alive, yet lost in a life that wasn't hers. This isn't just a story about a crime. It's a story about identity, about the fragile line between love and deception, about how one woman's longing for motherhood shattered another's world. You are about to hear one of the most haunting true stories of all time, the baby who vanished just 8 hours after birth, and the shocking moment the truth finally came home. This is the Found Files, where we bring the missing back into memory, where silence is broken and truth is found. Before we begin, take a moment, really think about this. If you were stolen as a baby, and the person who raised you loved you more than anyone else, could you hate them? Subscribe to the Found Files, because every share, every click, helps keep the stories of the lost alive. Some of them are still out there, waiting to be found. Before the headlines, before the heartbreak, there was only joy. It was a humid summer morning in Jacksonville, Florida, July 10, 1998. Inside the maternity ward of the University Medical Center, a teenage girl clutched her newborn daughter against her chest. Her name was Kamiyah Mobley, just 16 years old, young, frightened, and full of wonder. For Kamiyah, that tiny heartbeat in her arms was more than a child. It was her purpose, her chance to rewrite the hardships that had followed her since childhood. She had dreamed of this moment, of braiding little curls, of first birthdays, of lullabies whispered in the dark. Family and friends gathered around her hospital bed, celebrating a new life, her new life, and the arrival of a baby girl she named Kamiyah Teresiah Tasha Mobley. The name was chosen with care, a melody of faith and love, meant to protect her daughter in a world that wasn't always kind. For 8 precious hours, everything was perfect. Kamiyah fed her baby, wrapped her in a pink blanket, and breathed in the scent of new beginnings. She was learning the rhythm of motherhood, the soft hum of a baby's cry, the gentle comfort of touch, the quiet promises made in silence. The hospital bustled with the usual noise of nurses, visitors, and newborns. Nothing felt unsafe. Nothing felt wrong. But evil doesn't always come in the form of chaos. Sometimes, it comes dressed in white, calm, confident, and unnoticed. While Kamiyah dreamed of her daughter's future, someone else was walking the same halls with a plan that would destroy both of their lives. In that brief window of innocence, a young mother believed her world was secure. She didn't know that this day, this perfect morning, would soon become the day she would remember as the moment everything was stolen. Because just beyond her hospital door, destiny was waiting to change everything. This was the beginning of Kamiyah's life, and the beginning of her disappearance. It happened quietly, too quietly for anyone to notice. The morning light had just begun to filter through the hospital blinds when a woman stepped off the elevator, dressed in a crisp white uniform. She moved with the ease of someone who belonged there, calm, purposeful, invisible in her confidence. To everyone who saw her, she was simply another nurse doing her job. Her name was Gloria Williams. To the world, she would soon become a monster. But that morning, she wore the face of compassion. She entered room 328, where 16-year-old Kamiyah Mobley rested with her newborn daughter. Gloria smiled warmly, her tone professional yet comforting. She told Kamiyah that the baby needed to be taken for a routine checkup, nothing serious, just standard procedure. A young mother, exhausted and trusting, handed over her child. That was the last time she saw her. Gloria turned, cradling the swaddled infant, and walked out. Down the hall. Past the nurse's station. Past the cameras that didn't work. Out the door. And just like that, she vanished. Minutes passed. Then hours. Nurses came in to check on Shanira. The bed was empty, no baby. Confusion turned to panic. Panic turned to screams. A mother's cry echoed through the sterile hospital halls, a sound that would haunt those walls for decades. "My baby's gone," she screamed. Staff ran in every direction, alarms finally sounding, but it was too late. No one could understand how it had happened. No one saw her leave. No one questioned the nurse in white. By the time police arrived, Gloria Williams and baby Kamiyah were gone without a trace. Outside, the Florida heat pressed down on the city as if trying to smother the truth. Amber alerts blared. Flyers printed. News cameras rolled. But there were no leads, no suspects, no hope. Shanira, broken and trembling, was escorted from the hospital in a wheelchair, her arms empty, her eyes hollow. She was 16 years old, and her motherhood had lasted less than a day. What no one knew then was that Gloria Williams wasn't fleeing out of malice alone. She was running from her own heartbreak, a recent miscarriage, a life collapsing, a desperate need to feel whole again. But in filling her void, she would create another, one that would swallow an entire family in silence for 18 long years. The world had just witnessed a perfect kidnapping. And Kamiyah Mobley had just disappeared into a new life, one that didn't belong to her. In the small, quiet town of Walterboro, South Carolina, the sound of a baby's laughter once filled a modest home on a shaded street. The neighbors saw nothing strange, just a mother and her little girl. That little girl was Kamiyah Mobley, though the world, and she herself, knew her by another name, Alexis Kelli Manigo. To her, life was ordinary. Beautifully ordinary. She had no reason to question the woman she called Mom. Gloria Williams was gentle, attentive, and fiercely protective. She packed lunches, helped with homework, braided her hair for school, and scolded her when she stayed out too late. There were birthday parties and church picnics, Sunday dinners and laughter that filled the house. Gloria raised her with love, the kind of love that feels safe, the kind that makes you believe the world is simple and good. To everyone who met them, they were inseparable. A picture of family. But behind that love was a lie so deep, it became a second skin. Kamiyah, or Alexis, grew up hearing the stories Gloria told about her birth. About the day she came into her mother's arms, about how much she was wanted. There were no cracks in the story, no reason to doubt. In that small southern town, Alexis thrived. She made friends easily, excelled in school, and dreamed of becoming a social worker, just like the mother she admired. Gloria encouraged her, saying she was destined to help people, to change lives. And in many ways, she did. Because Alexis wasn't living as a prisoner, she was living a life stolen before she could ever choose it. For 18 years, she celebrated birthdays that weren't hers. She signed papers with a name that wasn't real. And she looked into the eyes of the woman who kidnapped her, and saw only love. It's easy to condemn the kidnapper. It's harder to understand the child, a child who grew up not knowing she was missing. There were no chains. No locks. Just a life built on silence. Gloria Williams didn't just steal a baby, she built an entire world around that lie. A world so convincing that even truth itself would have to fight to be believed. And for nearly 2 decades, the name Kamiyah Mobley existed only on faded police posters, aging in drawers, collecting dust, waiting for a miracle. Because somewhere in that quiet South Carolina town, the missing girl from Jacksonville was alive, and she had no idea she was the answer to one of the most heartbreaking mysteries in America. For 18 years, the truth lay hidden beneath the ordinary. But as Alexis grew older, the seams of her world began to quietly split. It started with something small, something most teenagers wouldn't even think twice about. A simple piece of paper. Her birth certificate. At 16, Alexis wanted to get her first job, like her friends. She needed identification, proof of who she was. But when she asked her mother for her birth certificate, Gloria hesitated. Days passed. Then weeks. Each time Alexis asked, Gloria's answers grew more uncertain, more evasive. One afternoon, sitting at the kitchen table, Alexis pressed again. And Gloria finally told her something that didn't sound right. She said there had been a mix-up when she was born, that the hospital made a mistake, and the records were lost. At first, Alexis believed her. She had no reason not to. But a quiet doubt began to settle in. It was the first time in her life her mother's voice didn't sound like home. Still, life went on. Until senior year came, and the lie had to stretch further than ever before. Her friends were applying for college, filling out forms that required birth certificates, social security numbers, official documents. But Alexis had none of those things. No social security number. No official birth record. No trace of her existence before the home she'd always known. The realization crept in slowly, then all at once, she didn't exist on paper. That night, Alexis confronted Gloria again. And what followed would forever change both their lives. Gloria, the woman who had raised her, sat her down and told her the truth, or, at least, a part of it. She said, "You were taken, but you were loved." Alexis didn't understand. How could she? She was 17, standing on the edge of a truth too heavy for her to hold. The mother she adored, the woman who had kissed her scraped knees, attended every school play, and whispered prayers beside her bed, was now confessing to the unimaginable. Gloria tried to soften the blow, saying she had rescued her from a broken situation, that her real mother couldn't take care of her. It was a story wrapped in justification, one that made Gloria sound like a savior instead of a kidnapper. But something inside Alexis broke that night. The foundation of her life, every memory, every belief, suddenly unstable. She was living proof that sometimes, the truth doesn't set you free immediately. Sometimes, it traps you between two worlds, one built on love, and the other on lies. And for a time, Alexis, or Kamiyah, chose silence. She loved Gloria too much to destroy her. So she carried the secret, until fate, and Facebook, decided to bring the truth to light. For nearly 2 decades, the Mobley family in Jacksonville, Florida, lived with a wound that never healed. Every birthday passed like a quiet storm, a cake, a candle, and a prayer for the baby who never came home. But in early 2017, that prayer was finally answered. The truth, long buried beneath years of lies, love, and denial, came rushing to the surface through something that never forgets: DNA. It began when a quiet tip reached the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Someone in Walterboro, South Carolina, had a suspicion. There was a young woman, Alexis Manigo, whose story didn't quite add up. She bore an uncanny resemblance to the composite image of a baby stolen in 1998. Authorities took note. Investigators began to dig, carefully, quietly. They didn't want to spook anyone, not even the girl herself. They contacted the woman's supposed mother, Gloria Williams, and asked for cooperation in a routine inquiry. Gloria, calm and collected as always, agreed. But inside, she knew. She knew that the secret she had guarded for 18 years was about to come crashing down. Then came the moment of truth. Police arrived at Alexis' school, her world frozen in an instant. They asked her to come in for questioning, gently but firmly. They told her they had reason to believe she wasn't who she thought she was. Confused and terrified, she cooperated. A DNA test was done. Swabs. Signatures. Silence. And then, the call came. The results were in. The young woman known as Alexis Kelli Manigo was, without a doubt, Kamiyah Tasha Mobley, the baby abducted from a Florida hospital nearly 2 decades earlier. The revelation shattered 2 families at once. In Florida, Kamiyah Mobley, Kamiyah's biological mother, dropped to her knees when investigators told her the news. After 18 years of praying, hoping, and clinging to memories of a single day in 1998, her baby was alive. Not gone. Not dead. Alive. but that joy came tangled in pain. Because the daughter she longed to hold again didn't see her as mom. She already had one, the woman who had stolen her. As news cameras swarmed, as headlines exploded, the world watched in disbelief. A stolen baby had been found alive, not in a foreign country or a hidden basement, but living openly, attending prom, working, laughing, and loving under another name. For years, Kamiyah had unknowingly lived a double life, the child of two mothers, one born of truth, the other of deception. And no matter what anyone said, the DNA didn't lie. Still, in her heart, Kamiyah wasn't ready to let go of either version of herself, or the woman who raised her, even if the world called her a criminal. The truth had finally come home. But healing, that would take much longer. When the truth finally surfaced, two worlds collided, one built on blood, the other on memory. For 18 years, Kamiyah Mobley had prayed for this moment, to look into her daughter's eyes again, to feel her heartbeat against her own. But when that day came, it didn't unfold like the fairy tales. It was messy, painful, and beautiful all at once. In a small room filled with cameras, investigators, and the weight of nearly 2 lost decades, Kamiyah Mobley saw her baby, now a young woman, for the first time since that July morning in 1998. The woman sitting before her was not the infant she'd once cradled in her arms. She was Kamiyah, but also Alexis, a living reflection of both her mothers. For a moment, neither could speak. Time stood still. Tears broke first, followed by trembling hands reaching across a table that felt like an ocean. Kamiyah whispered, "I never stopped looking for you." And Kamiyah, with confusion, love, and heartbreak tangled in her voice, said softly, "I know." There was no manual for this kind of reunion. No way to prepare for the storm of emotion that follows 18 years of silence. Kamiyah wanted to hold her tight, to make up for every birthday missed, every hug stolen by fate. But Kamiyah couldn't erase the life she'd lived, the mother who'd raised her, loved her, and, yes, lied to her. Her heart was split in two. Reporters called it a miracle. Psychologists called it trauma. But to the people living it, it was simply real. In those quiet moments after the cameras left, Kamiyah sat alone, holding a photograph of Kamiyah as a baby, the only picture she'd had for 18 long years. Now, she finally had her daughter back, but not the little girl she remembered. For Kamiyah, meeting her biological family was like stepping into a life she was meant to have, yet couldn't fully feel at home in. The reunion was both a beginning and an ending, the closing of one story and the uncertain opening of another. Because while the truth had finally brought them together, it had also left them standing between two worlds. One of love and forgiveness, and the other of loss and disbelief. Some stories end when the missing are found. But for Kamiyah Mobley, the ending was only the beginning, a lifelong journey of healing, identity, and forgiveness. After the cameras faded and the headlines cooled, she was left with two names, and two lives that didn't quite fit together. Kamiyah, the daughter who was stolen. Alexis, the girl who was raised with love by the woman who took her. Reconciling the two would take more than time, it would take grace. In interviews, Kamiyah often said, "I love my mother, no matter what." And she meant both of them. The world struggled to understand how she could still love her abductor, but love doesn't follow logic. It remembers the hands that fed you, the voice that sang you to sleep, the person who stood by you when no one else did. Yet, deep within her, Kamiyah also carried compassion for the woman who had spent 18 years crying out for her, Kamiyah Mobley, a mother whose arms were empty for almost 2 decades. It's the kind of pain no human should ever know, and yet, both women found a way to keep living, breathing, hoping. In June 2018, Gloria Williams was sentenced to 18 years in prison, 1 year for every year she raised Kamiyah under a stolen name. Justice, perhaps. But no sentence could return the time lost, or undo the love and confusion that bound all 3 women together. Today, Kamiyah continues to rebuild her life, balancing the truth of her past with the future she's determined to create. She's living proof that healing doesn't come from erasing what was broken, but from learning how to live with the cracks. And maybe that's the message of her story, that hope survives even after the silence. That even in the darkest chapters, love has a way of rewriting the ending. Because for every missing person still out there, for every family still searching, there is always a chance that the truth, no matter how long it takes, will find its way home. This is the Found Files. If Kamiyah's story moved you, if it reminded you of the power of faith, of love, of never giving up, then don't let it fade away here. Subscribe to the channel so these stories, of the missing, the found, and the miracles in between, continue to reach hearts like yours. Like this video. Share it. Because someone out there needs to know that hope is still alive. Until next time. This has been the Found Files, where the lost are never forgotten,